Hello there, and welcome back to another Minecraft tutorial. Again, still editing my other videos, but I wanted to show this tutorial. It's a little more complex than the path speed tutorial, what I call it, fast paths tutorial, which was only one command block. But this is a technique that you can use in map design, or, well, I don't really know what else, but I know it works for map design. I can't think of another use for it, but yeah. So this is using command blocks, especially the new 1.9 command blocks, to create a random number, to generate a random number using command blocks. Currently, to use redstone to generate random numbers, you do something like this, where you have a dropper pointing into a hopper, and it takes a stackable item and a non-stackable item. So when you press the button, it spits an item out into the hopper and goes right back, and for 1 second you either get a value of 1 or 3 depending on which of those two items it gives you. However, that means you only get a two possible outputs, 1 or 3, and then of course you can extend that and then have each of these go into another randomizer and you get another 2 values, so you can get 4 or 8 or 16 or 32 or whatever. But that limits your values to powers of 2, and it also gets very large very quickly. Whereas if you use command blocks, you can get really any number between 1 and whatever you want in a small amount of space. Now there are 2 ways to go about this. One method that I'm about to show you will always fit into this amount of space. Ignore that, that's just to trigger the generation of a random number. It will always fit into this amount of space, but it will take longer to generate a number if the range is larger. So if I want a value between 1 and 3, that'll be much faster than a value between 1 and 75. In fact, specifically, it takes exactly the number of ticks. So if I want to generate a number between 1 and 3, it'll take 3 ticks to do that. If I want to generate a number between 1 and 40, it'll take 2 ticks to do that. It'll take 40 ticks to do that, which is 2 seconds. So it can be slow if you want to use large ranges, depending on how often you want to trigger it or whatever. That may be acceptable. The other method will be constant time. In fact, it'll take 1 tick to generate a number with any range. However, it will require 3n plus 5 blocks, command blocks, to do it. So it can get very large very quickly, and it can get very tedious to do your command blocks. So basically, it's a trade-off between number of command blocks, or space, and speed, or running time. So, yeah. I'm just going to show you this method, and then explain the other method, because the other method is tedious to do, so I did not do it. But it's very similar in concept, so you should be able to figure it out yourself. But yeah, for this method, where it is a constant space but variable running time, basically whenever you want to generate a random number, you just set the score of this fake player RNG count, the rand objective, to 20 or whatever value you want. So if I put 20, it's going to pick a random number between 1 and 20 in 20 ticks. If I picked 5, it would pick a random number between 1 and 5 in 5 ticks. So that's how the system works. As soon as you set it, it's going to generate that number and then trigger some output, whatever you want to do with that number. So in this case, let's pick a random number between 1 and 5 in 5 ticks, and it's 5. 3, 1, 4, 4 again, 2. So yeah, you can see it's random. And then if I wanted to do in 20, it's going to take a little longer. Again, 20 ticks is 1 second, but it will generate larger numbers. So 16, 2, 3, or I should have said a larger range of numbers. 16, 12, 13. So yeah, values between 1 and 20 are showing up. So how does this work? The first thing is to have a clock of some sort. And basically I'm going to treat this as though you already have 1.9 or its snapshots, because it makes things a lot simpler. So for the clock, I'm just using a repeating command block that's always active with no command in it, and that's just acting as our clock. And then that goes into a chain command block. And actually, I just realized I could have just removed this and set this to a repeat, and that should work just fine as well. So let me just test that it does. It did not. Oh, you know what it is? There's a slight bug where if you change a different type of command block to a repeating command block, it doesn't actually work. So, oops. Let me just quickly do this. Scoreboard, players, test, RNG count, rand1. Alright, now it should work. No? Still not? Really? Oh, needs redstone. There we go. Always active. There you go. 2, 6. Oh, yeah. So that's... What? Oh, right, because it was already from before. So 5, 2, 19. Yeah. So you can see it still works. So that just cuts down on one command block. But yeah. So basically, you have a repeating, always active, unconditional command block here that's checking, that's doing a test. So scoreboard players test, RNG count, which is that fake player we use to trigger the generation, rand1. So what this is saying is, it's checking, is there a fake player called RNG count, and is its rand score at least 1? Which it will be when we trigger a generation, because it's between 1 and n, so it'll be at least 1. And if that's true, all of the rest of this chain is conditional. So the rest of this chain will only occur if that's true. And it's going to check 20 times a second, because that's how repeat blocks work. So yeah. So make sure all of the rest of these chain command blocks are always active and conditional. And chain, obviously. So the first thing we do is we summon an armor stand with the custom name of RNG. And it's invisible just because that way it looks nicer. It doesn't have to be if you don't want to. And for testing, it's good to make it not invisible. But once you're done with your final product, it's probably going to look nicer to just make them invisible so you don't see them. So it generates an armor stand called RNG. And then we do scoreboard players add to all the RNGs the rand score 0. So we're adding 0 to the rand score, which just tracks the new armor stand on the scoreboard, because it wouldn't be tracked already. So it tracks the rand score for that new armor stand. And then we use scoreboard players operation to set any RNG armor stands with a rand score of 0 to equal the rand score of RNG count. So what this does is all of our armor stands, they come on and they get named RNG, and they get 0 added to their rand score, which means new armor stands will have a rand score of 0. So this looks for the new armor stands, and it sets their rand score to the score in RNG count. Now, when I triggered this, I set it to 20 or 5 or, 1 to n. So the first armor stand that's created will have that value, so it'll be 20. And then we remove 1, so subtract 1 from RNG counts rand score. So this is remove 1 from RNG counts rand score. So now it'll be 19. So then the next loop, this is still at least 1. So it'll do it again, summon another armor stand, start tracking it, recognize that it's 0, and set it to 19, and then drop down to 18. And so that continues looping, so you'll get an armor stand for every value from 1 to n generated right above this block. And then, once you get down to 1, it'll drop down to 0. This will trigger, and it'll say, oh, it is not 1. RNG counts rand score is less than 1. So these won't trigger because these are conditional, and this will turn off. While it's generating, this will be on because it's saying it's successfully found RNG count of 1 or more. When it hits 0, it'll turn off, which will turn this torch on and trigger this line. And so what this line does is it's got this impulse needs redstone unconditional command block, which is just a normal command block, which means when the torch turns on, it will trigger this. And we call the spreadplayers command. Now spreadplayers, what it does is it takes some values and it spreads entities, which can be players or other entities, randomly around your world. And that's what we're taking advantage of here to find our random number. We have all the numbers from 1 to n generated in armor stands right here, and as soon as that's done, we spread them around randomly. And so just so you know what the arguments are, we have spread players. This is the x of the center, and this is the z of the center, which is to say it is the x coordinate of the center of the random area. So if you take everyone and you find the average, you find the radius that they are from each other, they'll all be centered around this coordinate. And I'm just using the command block's coordinate because we're going to be using those coordinates later. So x and z center, and then you have the minimum distance between the armor stands, in this case, the entities, which is, in this case, 1 block. You can use 0, but we want them all to be spaced out because we want to pick just one and not have multiple ones stacked on top of each other that could interfere with each other. So a minimum of 1 block away from each other, a maximum of 50 blocks. You can change this. You can change it to 100 or whatever. I used 50 because it seems small enough. If you do it too large, you might spread them into unloaded chunks. And if they all get spread into unloaded chunks, then it screws up the system. And that's a small chance, but it is a possible chance. So I just stick with 50, so it'll be inside loaded chunks. Of course, again, what this is the maximum distance from this center that they will be teleported to. You can do whatever number you want, just make sure that there's not a chance that they go out into unloaded chunks. False is just whether it respects teams or not. In this case, it doesn't really matter. It could be true or false because our entities, our armor stands, are not on teams. But depending on your use, you may want to do something different with that. And that just says that things on the same team get teleported around the same spot. Again, probably doesn't matter in our case, but I picked false just to be sure. And then we do what entities we want to spread. And in this case, it's our armor stands named RNG, which we generated over here. So this spreads them around randomly, and then we just pick one. And how do we do that? We have this RNG fake player, and we set its rand score to the rand score of the one nearest armor stand. So we have armor stand RNG, which again we generated there and then spread out here, and we find the nearest one, and we use that score and store it in the RNG fake players rand score. And since we spread them around randomly, which one is closest will be a random one. And it will have a value between 1 and n, because that's how we generated them before. So we get a random number between 1 and n saved to RNG. And then we clean up by killing all of the RNG armor stands, and that's it. And then you can do whatever you want with it. This part is not required. This is just my output, where I just output to the chat the score in RNG. RNG is rand objective. That's what Telrod does. It outputs to the chat with optional parameters from the JSON object. But yeah, so again, this is not necessary. This is just whatever you want to do with your output. But this part generates all the numbers from 1 to n in armor stands, and once they're generated, it spreads them out, picks the closest one, which is random because the spreading is random, and then just cleans up by killing them all. So that's how the system works. 18, yeah. So it's simple, it's small, it's nice for whatever you want. However, again, it is slow for larger ranges. So what you can do to put this in a OneTick clock so that the whole thing generates a random number in 1 tick is make it very, very large. And what I mean by that is, instead of having this have this RNG count that you're testing for and then subtracting 1 and then looping, instead of doing that, you just manually put in the command blocks to create these armor stands with the values you want. So if you want a value from 1 to 20, you would put 21 command blocks, every other one generating an armor stand, or summoning an armor stand, and then the ones in between setting their values manually from 1 to 20. Which is ridiculous, because for 20 things you need 40 command blocks. It would be massive. I mean, you can do it. It's just tedious and huge. But it allows you to do random number generation in 1 tick, whereas this is not tedious at all. It's simple, it's small, compact, but it is a little slower for larger numbers. So it's kind of a trade-off. You can decide what you want to do depending on the range you need from your numbers. I prefer this because most of the time I'm not going to need to generate things in 1 tick, random values in 1 tick. So this is fine. But you can see, like, if I needed to generate numbers from 1 to 100, let's say, it could get, well, let's pick a multiple of 20 here, 120. It could get slow pretty fast. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There you go. It took 8 seconds to generate a random number between 1 and 120. I'm actually surprised about that, because it should have taken 120 steps, which is 6 seconds. I'm not sure where the extra 2 seconds came in. Yeah, I really don't know. Right? 20 times... No, it is 6. Yeah, no, 20 times 6 is 120. So it should have been 6 seconds. It came out to be 8 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah. Weird. It took an extra 2 seconds. Let me try with this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Why didn't that work? 1, 2, 2. 1. There. Okay. So one. Yeah, anyway, I'll look at this later, but yeah. Basically, the larger your range, the slower it gets, so, you know, pick your method. I like this method. Sorry for all the rambling, more than usual. I should have tested this a little better before I decided to record an unedited video, but that's what you get for unedited videos. So, until next time, keep randomizing.